Globalization doesn't mean everybody in the world speaks English, or that everybody in the world is fundamentally an American with a few differences. America is increasingly engaged with all kinds of different cultures. We have a global community, and we need to have our people and our communities better prepared to work effectively with these many different and diverse cultures.
Understanding other people, their cultures, their languages is essential for our future.
Whether we are engaging the world or our culturally diverse homeland, America's future success will rely on the global competence of our people.
The United States is going to be living in a very different world. We're going to see the emergence of new powers, and the United States is going to have to be able to adjust to this and be ready to take its place of leadership and be able to compete. We are at a point where the United States is changing. We have now the biggest immigrant population we've had since the 20s. Within every community today, you have a need for government to communicate with its citizens, businesses to communicate with their customers. That's going to grow. You're going to have the people with the skills and the training and the capacity to work in a world that has demands that are different from those of my generation.
All Americans, regardless of chosen profession, require global competence to function in a world where diversity, global engagement, and competition are the norm.
Here at the Department of Defense, we're not just engaged in military operations, but in peacekeeping and humanitarian relief. The skill set that is required is a knowledge of cultures and a knowledge of languages. Having to go through an interpreter all the time is a real problem.
I'm a U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. I provide training and equipment for the Nepal Army. You can't do these kinds of engagements without a significant degree of personal connection and trust. And where does that personal connection come from? Language and cultural skills.
I use Arabic here at Carnegie as the editor of a bilingual publication. I'm in daily contact with Arab authors, commissioning articles from them, reading and editing their articles in Arabic. When I worked at the Department of State, I was able to establish contact with people in the Arab world, politicians, civil society activists, to open up channels of communication that hadn't existed before. I think it's important for American diplomats to have deep regional competence, mastery of one or more of the major languages, the history of the region, the culture, the politics, the religions.
Even if you have a very America-centric business, you're going to be under competition from companies abroad. You're going to be meeting executives from abroad. You're going to be going abroad for meetings.
If you're American and you want to compete, you better know the language and understand the culture. In a place like China, emerging market, changing daily, information's vital. And if you don't have it, it's a recipe for disaster. There are Americans who don't speak the language, and they're putting themselves at a big disadvantage vis-a-vis Europeans, Japanese, Koreans. Knowing the language of my customer gives me advantages when it comes to negotiating a contract, securing a signature, getting paid.
When I go into Kenya, speaking Swahili, people look at me as someone who is truly committed to what I do. It's critical in the field of development that you have an understanding of the conditions and the cultural sensitivities and needs, because these are the very communities you're seeking to help.
I work as a director for an NGO, a medical health services organization in Guatemala called Buku Kawok. Our clinics are very unusual, mostly because we use indigenous languages. We as an organization trying to advocate the spirit of responsible volunteerism, where one takes the time to really learn about the place where one's going and to acquire the necessary skills to be effective. And those are primarily language and cultural skills.
I'm a PhD candidate in education policy studies. I'm conducting my dissertation research in Gujarat, India. Game gummy. Go. In order to be considered globally competent, the educational professional needs to have had exposure to other cultures, other ways of living, and have additional language skills. It's not only important that they have this exposure, but that they understand things from various viewpoints and be able to critically analyze their own culture.
I travel back and forth to China, and I go and I talk to a range of officials and business people and activists. My mission to provide knowledge and advice to U.S. policymakers to help them stay ahead of the curve. Bringing an understanding of how others view the United States back into the United States really can help us make better decisions about how to approach our role in the world. As the world's leading democracy, it's incumbent upon Americans to have an understanding of the world around us in order to be a more informed electorate.
Developing global competence must become part of the core mission of education, from K-12 through graduate school. It is imperative that we greatly expand our education system's capacity to provide international education for all Americans.
If we begin at a very young age to offer the opportunities to our children to study foreign languages, and expose them to other cultures and the histories of other countries and other perspectives on the world, that we're going to begin to build the foundation for an America that's much better able to face all these challenges and to work with people across political and geographic boundaries.
It's going to mean that our businesses and our government and our NGOs and our social organizations are all going to have to pitch in and support the idea that these are important subjects.
In order for Americans to be able to work with all people, they need to have an understanding of how different people live, different people view the world, and only with that understanding will we all be able to work together effectively to solve our problems.